Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 18th meeting of the Dover Area School Board. If you'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Benko, could we have roll call, please?
Mr. Emig?
Here.
Mrs. Maley?
Here.
Mr. Eifert?
Here.
Mrs. Mefford?
Here.
Mrs. Herman?
Here.
Mr. Rawhauser?
Here.
Mr. DeLauder?
Here.
Mr. Deschaux? Mr. Cook?
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. First on our agenda tonight is presentations and celebrations. Mr. Cherry.
All right, so is Mr. Rapp here? He's supposed to be here. I guess not. Tori's given me the no, so we're going to move on. Yes, we'd like to recognize the following athletes who have signed their intent to go to college. So if these individuals would come forward, we'd like to recognize you for your outstanding efforts. So Madison Miller signed with Westchester University. Is Madison here? Okay, come on up. Peyton Miller, Westchester. We have Matt Farr, who signed with Lock Haven University. Is Matt here? Sarah is a Kistner. All right. Findlay University in Ohio. Coleman Hoffman, Arcadia University. Not here. Okay. And then Brooke Firestone. Is Brooke here for the Messiahs?
Mr. Cherry, we actually have 2 more in attendance.
All right.
He wasn't on.
Yeah.
Natalie Connery. And Robert Mays is going to Franklin Marshall.
And I was also laughing because I met with the group of seniors last week to talk with them about graduation locations, and the whole snow day thing came up and so forth, and we were all saying no more snow days, no more snow days. And where did Brooke go? Brooke said she needed one more. I just need one more snow day. So I was laughing with her and letting her know she got her extra day. So we're done for the year now. So congratulations, though, to all the athletes. Very, very impressive.
Okay, Boyer and Ritter joining us tonight. Okay. If our student athletes would like to go, I'm sure you have more exciting things to do than listen to a financial audit report. No offense to you, but
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pretty common. I was glad to see that I was included under the presentations and celebrations for the presentation of the annual audit. It's the first time I've been under the celebrations category, but it is. I'm here to present your external financial statement audit, and it's a good report that I'm going to deliver tonight. You have a clean bill of health, and basically all the areas that are pretty significant to your external financial statement readers and users. So my name is Matt Wildison. I'm the partner in charge of your external audit. A couple areas that I want to go over with you tonight that are of significance. The first thing that I do want to bring to your attention, I know it's gotten some attention in the local government, state government arena over the last several years. It's a new accounting standard, Government Accounting Standard, or GASB Statement Number 68. And that got implemented this year, and you might say, well, why does this matter? How's it relevant to us? Well, it turns around, and what it does is it takes the PSERS liability, or the Public School Employee Retirement System liabilities. You know, that's underfunded, and it's underfunded by a pretty significant amount. And what the GASB Statement Number 68 required all the state and local governments across the United States to do was to pick up any kind of your share of any kind of underfunding of the pension liability. So this year, when you started out the year, you ended at the end of this year, you have a debt section, and what you have in that debt section is you have the bonds that the school district has borrowed in the past. And that amount totals about $47 billion, and that's here to pay for the buildings that you use and the infrastructure that you have to educate the students. And then also in the long-term debt section is your proportionate share of the PSERS net pension liability, and that amount is actually $67 million. So it's we're seeing this in almost all the schools, where this net pension liability, or this promise to pay in the future, is actually larger than the actual borrowings of the school. But it's an allocated share. It's based on your wages in relation to everybody else's wages across the state, or all the other schools and organizations that participate in the retirement system. A couple things to kind of keep in mind when you're throwing around a big number like that is that the school's done everything. Dover School District has done everything within its responsibilities, paid all the required contributions. You don't set the benefits for the teachers, you don't set the retirement rates, you don't set the contribution rates. What you're required to do on an annual basis is to turn around and provide for it in your annual budget. Where you're making contributions this past year, in the 14-15 year, you paid 20% of an average of an employee's salary went in as a contribution to the PSERS retirement system. 15-16, that number jumped up, I believe, to 25%, and now what's happening is that number continues to grow, and I believe you're looking at a 30% number in the future that you're climbing up to. So the retirement system is scaling up the required contribution rates on everybody. It's not just Dover School District, it's everybody across the Commonwealth. The other thing to kind of keep in mind when you throw a number out like that is, first of all, that the state, when I say you pay 21%, 25%, or 30%, the state does pick up half of that in terms of a reimbursement to you, or a subsidy going to you. But what they don't do is they don't pick up half of the liability. So if I say your liability is $67 million, they don't say, well, the total liability is actually 130 million. Actually, your liability is half of the 67 as it stands now. But the state doesn't take their share of the liability because they're not. They appropriate for it annually. They're not required by law to directly fund that money into PSERS. They go through it, they appropriate for it annually, and then they turn around and reimburse you. So because of that situation, they don't turn around and pick it up. So what you're looking at is a gross number for your share. The final point that I would make on this is that when you look at what you guys have done over the last several years in terms of your fund balance, you guys have set aside some money within your fund balance to allow yourselves, as these rates climb, that you have some reserves set aside to pay for it. And I would say that you've done a nice job. You have about $3.5 million set aside. So as the rate continues to climb and will stay at or above that 30% level in the future, and PSERS puts those projections out there as to how long that's going to stay there. You can probably use that to ease the burden as you are dealing with as you're dealing with your budgets, just both now and now and into the future. So the district's done a nice job in terms of setting money aside for that rainy day, and the rainy day is here and is going to continue for a while. So, any kind of questions on GASB statement number 60? I know there's a lot to throw at you. But now I often say like this. Now let's turn the page to the things that you guys can control in terms of what the opinion that Boyer and Ritter is issuing on your financial statements, and the compliance audit that you had. It's in there that this area that we have very good news. 4 primary areas that we look at. We look at the opinion on the financial statements, and then we look at your internal controls over financial reporting. And we look at your compliance. We issue a compliance opinion, and then we issue a report on the internal controls over your compliance. So with regard to the financial report, you get a clean opinion on your financials. And basically that's the expectation. It's an unqualified opinion or unmodified opinion. It's what your public expects. It's what the bondholders of the district expect. It's what any other constituents that you might have, bond underwriters, whatever, that's what they would expect. So the next report we have is we have to do a yellow book report or a government auditing standards report. That's required because you receive about $2 million of federal awards annually. And what we're required to do in that report is issue an internal control over financial reporting opinion or report. And it's in there that we are required to evaluate the internal controls that you guys have in place. From a segregation of duties, making sure the right people are doing the right things, to how you control your cash receipts, to how you go through proper authorization and control of dollars as funds are leaving the district. So we go through and we evaluate that. We take that out of the box every year, so to speak, and we evaluate them and make sure that things are running. And you've had some changes over the last couple of years. When Boyer and Ritter first started working with the district, there were a number of significant deficiencies and material weaknesses that your management teams worked very hard to clean up over the years. So, and I know Jen was part of that. And but every year we have to come back in and take a look at it with a fresh set of eyes to make sure that things are being done properly. So this year, with regard to your internal control over financial reporting, you get a clean bill of health, and that's what you would expect. You get a clean report there. Now, moving on to the compliance reports, I believe this year we looked at the school lunch program and we looked at the IDEA funding. It's in those areas that Boyer and Ritter issued a clean opinion on your compliance, and we also issued a clean opinion on your internal controls over compliance. Those processes and systems that you have in the district to make sure that you stay compliant. And I end on that note because then I point over to a management letter that we also issued that brings your attention to the fact that there's some uniform grant guidance that was issued by the federal government in December of 2014. And I know, just talking to Jen here, that she's working diligently on evaluating the guidance that they've issued to make sure that the organization stays compliant with regard to how it spends its federal awards. And the uniform grant guidance turned around and really asked people to take a look at making sure that all their policies are updated to make sure that they're staying in compliance with the uniform guidance. But that's really what the management letter speaks to, and that the compliance, the other point that I'll make on that is that compliance is not just all in the fiscal office. Compliance with regard to the federal awards goes to the people that are running the programs, it goes to the people who are getting letters from the Department of Education. Everybody that touches or is in any way part of a federal program, sometimes they go to a training and they hear about new requirements and they assume that the fiscal people are getting that same information. And the word of caution that I would throw out there is don't ever assume that, because a lot of times they may not be getting that information. So you really have to have a collaborative effort across the district to make sure that you're staying compliant, and especially in a year of significant change. But overall, you know, you have 4 key areas, and you got very high marks, so the highest marks in all 4 of them. So it is reason for celebration. So maybe I should do the presentation. So anyway, are there any questions?
Okay. All right,
Well,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for Mr. Wilderson, appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you for the work you've done and working with our team. You know, it's always great to work with you guys, so thanks again, and appreciate it.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Mrs. Benko and the rest of the administrative team and everybody that's involved in doing this. I know it's a big production to do the audits and also to get the results that you got as well this time. So congratulations to everybody involved there. Thank you. Okay. Moving on our agenda, the communications category, we have our student reports.
Thank you. Starting off with our high school level, want to recognize the students of the month. They are Sierra Melhorn and Brady Bennett. Going to an academic standpoint of things, we had 387 students over at the high school earn either an honor roll or distinguished honor roll status, and that was during semester number 1. And then the district initiatives such as Collins Writing, 10% summaries, and interactive read-alouds are currently taking place in all of the high school classrooms. More co-curricular kind of things. Our music department was very successful in their endeavors of their district level music competition. So in District 7 Jazz Band, we had 3 students make that. We had Tyler Hess, Sam Brown, and Peter Bear. Moving on to District 7 Vocal Jazz Ensemble, we had Bella Portellis, Brady Bennett, Bree Crudup, Marilyn Walbert, Leon Zellers, and Colin Shreve. And then for our Vocal Jazz Ensemble, there was only 12 students that actually got into the District 7 Jazz Ensemble, and half of those students were from our own high school, so that's pretty awesome that out of the entire District 7, half of them came from Dover. And then we also had a couple people make All-State Vocal Jazz Ensemble. They are Brady Bennett, Bree Crudup, and Leon Zellers. Moving on to our theater, we had a new elective this year, the Advanced Theater class. We had 4 of those students enter a contest with the Strand Capitol. It was a playwriting contest. And out of the 10 plays that the Strand Capitol selected, 4 of them were written by our very own Dover students. So seniors April Schaefer, Brady Bennett, Bella Portellis, and junior Hannah Williams were the winners, and their plays are actually going to be directed by professional directors and performed at the Strand Capitol, so that's like a huge achievement for them. So we look forward to seeing them in action over at the Strand Capitol. Going to competitive academics, we have our mock trial. They won their first competition back on February 1st, and they are actually back at the courthouse tonight. They took action at 5:15 this evening, and we're hoping that they bring home some winners from that conference. We also have our DECA State Conference, which is our competitive business club. They're going to be competing at the state conference up in Hershey, March 1st through the 3rd. Extracurriculars that are happening over at the high school, we saw all of our student athletes here tonight that committed to the collegiate level. So we look forward to seeing what they have in store for college and furthering their athletic talents. And then also our financial aid night is taking place currently right now, started at 6:30 over at the high school auditorium. Moving on to the middle school level, on February 26th, they're going to be presenting the new Avidum group over there. Many of you guys know about our Avidum group that we started back at our high school, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago. It has been a very well-received program. It has expanded tremendously, and so now they're introducing it to our students at the middle school level. And on the 26th, they're going to have an assembly that has they're going to present the whole suicide prevention program and the idea of I've got your back. Going to music with them, they had 11 students be accepted into the York County Middle School Honors Band Festival. They're going to be having their concert at Susquehannock High School on Saturday, March 5th at 4 p.m. So if you guys don't have anything going on March 5th, feel free to go out to Susquehannock and support our middle school band members. And then last report coming from me, and then I'm going to turn it over to Julie. From LIBE, the Eagles on the Run program, 2016 program, ended on the 11th, and they had 42 students involved in that, and all of the 42 students completed a 1-mile fun run. They're also going to be hosting a PTO movie night coming up tomorrow, Friday, and they're going to be showing Hotel Transylvania 2. And lastly, coming up on March 11th, the Live PTO is going to be hosting a talent show. It's going to be held over at the high school auditorium, so we're looking forward to seeing all of our elementary kids in action with their talents.
All right, so I'll be starting with Dover. 13 of their students are participating in the Bricks for Kids program, which is offered outside of the school day. Those 13 students build devices out of Lego blocks, and their first week they built an electronic jackhammer. The end of the second trimester reward will be a superheroes assembly program that focuses on school-wide unity and promoting a bully-free school. And finally, their student advisory group had the students vote for their Super Bowl winner, and they selected the Panthers, which they ended up losing, so. Moving on to North Salem Elementary School. Monday, February 29th, they will be having a family book bingo night to kick off Read Across America Week. Their fifth graders received their class rabbits and are conducting a STEM experiment involving food intake and weight ratios. And they want to congratulate Mackenzie Emig, who is their student champion of the month. And lastly, I will be doing Wagglestown Elementary. They held a puppy bowl during Super Bowl week, and they collected 459 items for the SPCA and Susquehannock service dogs. And February 3rd, that was the 100th day of school, so they all dressed like old 100-year-olds, and they completed 100 acts of kindness.
Any questions from any board members?
It's just understanding that our Renaissance group has been invited back to Carnegie Hall to sing in an upcoming time frame. So that's quite an accomplishment as well at the high school. So congratulations to them. Did get to go along with them the last time they sang up there, and it's quite an experience. So I know they were excited about that honor as well.
Any other board members? Aaron and Julie, thank you. A lot of exciting things happening there, great things happening in the district, so thank you for coming tonight. You two are also welcome to stay if you'd like, or take off and do other things as well, so it's up to you. Thank you very much. Okay, on our agenda next is our public comment period. This is for items that are on or off the agenda. If you have anything that you would like to remark on, you may come to the podium. You would need to state your name, your address, and we do have a 3-minute period for each public speaker in our public period comment. So is there anybody that would like to make a comment tonight?
Good evening. Oh, sorry.
Name.
Amy Slater, 3049 Solar Drive. Over the past few days, I've been going over the new curriculum, and I've had some concerns. Quite honestly, I've lost a lot of sleep over it. Mr. Cherry, I just want to thank you and Ms. Jackson for calling me yesterday and trying to ease my concerns. And I'm sure my husband and I will take you up on the open door that you offered. I know we're going to have more questions and more concerns, but after our phone calls, some things were more clear while some things still remained questionable. I would just feel better if all involved knew of my concerns. I just didn't want to go on without thanking you for taking the time out of your day to call me and try to ease my mind. After having the night to think of our conversation and talk it over with my husband, I totally understand the direction that things are going. On paper, the suggested education plan looks really great, but I'm still concerned, and I'm on the fence right now, not really sure if I should say anything, and if I don't, I'm afraid I will regret it. So I hope it's understood that what I'm trying to convey is spoken with a very heavy heart. I understand that students with IEPs will still have available help. I understand there will still be learning support classes. I also understand that lower level classes is what is being eliminated. I understand it is the thought that all students should be taught on grade level, and I think it's a wonderful goal to have, but like every goal, there has to be a ladder to be able to climb in order to achieve these goals. Our youngest son, Evan, has an IEP. He's worked really hard and set goals for himself to be out of learning support classroom and in an inclusion classroom, a goal he set for himself, a ladder he climbed. And as going into his freshman year, he did achieve that goal. But with the new curriculum, he'll be starting off in that inclusion classroom on grade level, something he has never seen before. While his SDIs on his IEP will remain in place, we do fear that he will fail before he is able to find a balance. He knows that he learns differently than others. It's not something we hide from him. He knows he has to work harder to be able to move forward. We are proud of all of our children, all 4 of them. Our 2 oldest boys, both in college, both went from point A to point D without any trouble at all. One of them helped build the electronic drum set. One of them plays on a college baseball team, and you would think that would tip our proud parent scale, but it doesn't. Evan has to work so much harder to grasp the concepts that others do not have to. We invite any one of you to please sit with him while he's working. Watch how he has to focus on a math problem or an English story, how he has to noodle through thinking differently and taking that problem or story apart, put it back together in smaller pieces, and put it together again and again until it's right. That moment when he finally gets it, it's a beautiful thing. My husband and I will be keeping a very close eye on his grades, so hopefully before he gets a failing grade, we can intervene, especially because he likes to be involved in extracurricular activities, and they really do build his self-confidence. He would be devastated if he was academically ineligible. Just to add a little bit more on Evan's plate, we've just recently learned that he has been diagnosed with a genetic disorder. There were abnormalities in his chromosomes. We've learned that those abnormalities are the cause of his learning disability. So over the next few months, we'll be seeing endocrinologists and genetic specialists at Hershey to try to pinpoint exactly where Evan's plan for his future will need to be, what direction his IEP will need to go into. It is a challenge that we are dealing with, but something we work on together with the support of his staff and his teachers that have always been in place for Evan, always a wonderful area of support and care. It feels as though the education has worked really hard to make sure things have changed to where we see that students learn in shades of gray instead of just black and white. With this curriculum, it feels like it's going backwards. It feels like we're going to try to force a circle-shaped student into a square peg. And I'm not just talking about students that have learning disabilities or special needs. I'm talking about students that have learning gaps. I'm very worried that they're going to be giving a curriculum that they don't understand. They also need to have a ladder to climb on. You cannot expect them to jump at the top of the ladder without going through each and every step. What about those students that are right on the edge between grade level courses and honor courses? They will be in the classroom with inclusion students and students with learning gaps. Their progress will have to slow, and that's not fair for them. My husband told me a story that he heard on the radio with someone interviewing a grandmother at how this day and age she stays close to her grandchildren. Her grandkids are always on their devices and never seem to have time for her. And her answer, she went out and bought herself a smartphone, learned how to text and email her grandchildren. She said it was important for her that she keeps the connection with them by coming to their level, not expecting them to come to her level. To her level. It seems to me that while we want our students to be their best, we are expecting them to come to our level instead of meeting them at a level is more realistic. Isn't that what a community as a whole should be doing? Meeting someone is where they are at to help them grow instead of expecting them to grasp concepts to learn that they've never seen. Before this plan is to put into action, be sure every single T is crossed and every I is dotted. We have a responsibility to every one of our Dover students. Dover proud. We believe all Eagles will demonstrate perseverance, respect, ownership, unity, dedication. What a powerful message for our students. Just make sure that we are all Dover proud. Please make sure you persevere in making sure our students get fair and just education. Please respect those that need the extra help, specifically those that fall through the cracks. Please take ownership of your decision to stay involved, and if it's what it is, make it work for every student. Unify with those students that don't achieve the goal set before them. Please make sure that they have self-confidence and a support system in place. Don't let them get lost, especially those students that really need a support system. And I quote from the webpage, dedicate yourself to learning, be reliable, be engaging, and commit to goals. We We cannot expect our students to abide by that acronym without making sure we are leading by example. That is what this is about. It isn't about a final grade on a paper or score on an assessment. Every single community is different. We can't go off a broad spectrum of test scores of what other communities are doing. It's about the here and now, our community, our students. It's about making sure we are taking care of our students. We meet them where they are and grow together at their level.
Thank you, Mrs. Slater. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no one. Oh, seeing someone.
Hi, everybody. My name's John Friesner. I'm a teacher at the high school. I'm just here to urge you to consider pushing your vote on the program of studies to our next board meeting, because I know there are many teachers that would like to sit in a curriculum meeting and just discuss a lot of the changes we didn't know where were changing until we saw the agenda. So the new program of studies was in the agenda. There are some differences. We just want to sit down and have a discussion. If it's possible to have that curriculum meeting and have us sit down and discuss before the vote, we'd really appreciate it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Friesner. Anybody else? Okay, moving on. We did have an executive session tonight, beginning at 6 o'clock, to address personnel matters that were related to appointments and retirements throughout the district. At this time, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. I move that the school board approve the minutes of the January 19th, 2016 board meeting.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, let's take a vote. Mrs. Benko. That's fine.
Give me 1 minute, please.
Technical difficulties.
There we go. I apologize for the wait.
Okay. Motion carries. I move that the school board approve the minutes of the January 21st, 2016 board planning meeting.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Benko will have a vote. Okay, 8 yeses, motion carries. Moving on the agenda, I move that the school board approve the consent agenda as listed. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Questions or discussion on any items on the consent agenda?
I would just like to make a note that there were several items that were removed from consent and added to individual roll call votes, such as the curriculum course selection guide for the high school.
Thank you, Mrs. Mefford. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, Mrs. Benko will have the vote. 8 yeses, motion carries. Moving on the agenda, comprehensive planning. Mrs. Maley, is there anything else you would like to bring before the board tonight in your area?
No.
Okay.
Not this time.
That's where she has to do the selection guide. That's where she has to do the selection guide.
Was that moved today?
Curriculum and professional development.
Comprehensive planning. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is curriculum and professional development. That would be Mr. DeLauder and Mrs. Herman. We have one item to cover on that, and that would be the course selection guide.
That's correct. Would you like to
Yeah,
do your
and
presentation?
then I'd like to actually ask Ms. Jackson and Ms. Geyer to come forward as well. I just wanted to give some background and some context. So, Mrs. Slater, I thank you for accepting my phone call and having a conversation, because I think not only were we able to share professional concerns, but I think we were also able to share our own personal stories and struggles that we have with both, with our children both. So I thank you for accepting our phone calls, even when the phone died and we got back, so a little glitch. So just wanted to give you some historical background in terms of the course guide selection and kind of what has led or morphed into the change that we have right now. Actually, the communication regarding the change of the course selection guide started last year when Principal Rickard was here. It started earlier on. I had drawn concerns about the course selection guide appearing to, in essence, almost track students. So I look at it back in the days when I went to school, early 80s, you kind of picked your track and that's kind of where you stayed. So if you were in general, that's all you did. If you were academic, that's all you did. If you were FFA or FHA, that's kind of what you did. Or you were VOTEC, you were VOTEC. And I was concerned that it really didn't allow students the flexibility to kind of integrate throughout tracks. So, even if they wanted to take higher level math, they could still take on grade level ELA and so forth. So through the process this year, we really began to take a look at the information that was provided and began to streamline as well as ensure that we had common language throughout the course selection guide. So there was a lot of attention this year spent to the guide that it hadn't been the last year, and so forth. And part of it was, first of all, to kind of protect the rights of students. One of the areas that drew the most concern was we had a particular section just entitled Special Ed. And my concern there was that we were advertising specific courses for special ed students by course number, meaning that all students, parents, faculty, whoever had the ability to take a look at the course selection catalog, knew the courses that we were offering to special ed students. And if you happened to pass by that classroom, then you would know which students had IEPs, which actually break their independent rights. And one of the things I did do, just as an opportunity, is I went and selected and downloaded course selection guides from all of York County, and my reasoning was straight. No other school district in York County advertises specifically just for special education programming. And I use my own son's story there too. My son goes to a naming school district. He has an MR classification. And when he comes home with his course selection guide, he comes home like any other 10th grader going into 11th grade next year saying, all right, I'm going to be taking English 3, I'm going to be taking geometry next year's my chemistry year. He doesn't tell me, you know what, because I'm MR, here are all of my MR classes I have to take that are aligned to special ed and so forth. So I had concerns about that. So, we took that section out in terms of print, but we didn't eliminate the course. So I really wanted to, like I said, protect students' rights and make sure that we weren't advertising there. Also, what drew some of the classroom elimination is the fact that Senate Bill 880 moved the Keystone till 2019. And through Pedro Rivera also got the idea that we didn't need remedial classes anymore because we weren't held to the Keystone graduation. So project-based assessments and so forth like that could be put on the back burner so you could concentrate on academic standards. Go ahead. Sorry, I wish I had a click. I didn't have the clicker. So what does that actually mean because you don't see those two pieces of information? First of all, students with IEPs, as Mrs. Slater and I talked about yesterday, they will continue to have all of their needs met for inclusion, pull-out, replacement, and so forth, but it'll be specifically aligned to the goals and objectives of their IEP. Case in point, my child comes home, he gives me his course selection guide, I select his classes, he goes to school. Typically, within 2 to 3 weeks, I get a call from his case manager. Hey, Ken, you know, you came in this year, we reviewed your child's IEP. Don't forget, even though your child has selected English 3, and he's only reading at a 4th grade level at 60%, this is what we're going to do that. So he gets individualized instruction or attention based on the IEP in which he has. We will still continue to offer Tier 3 and Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction, which will be done by the classroom teachers through the RTII process. So we shouldn't be utilizing a class automatically as a Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention. We should be actually drawing up plans with each one of these individual students, particularly as you go to a Tier 3, because the parents need to be involved in that. The parents should be sitting at the table helping to develop those goals and objectives for students to make sure that they're protected through that as well. So I say to that, as I said to Mrs. Slater, all of those things that are currently in place will continue to be in place as they have been. I think this opportunity, as we take a look at the course selection guide, will also allow us to really identify, and we talked about this, what happened at the high school many, many years ago was the conversation on how best to use those instructional times during the block. So when you think about 88 minutes, how do we best utilize that time to not only teach to the whole, but then also how those things that we do to meet the individual needs of students during that time too. And then finally, I think what has happened through the course selection guide process as well is it allows us to think of those other types of learners. So not every student is a classroom learner. Not every student wants to sit in a desk behind a chair and listen to an instructor each and every single day. What we need to be doing, because if you take a look at our enrollment, we lose an average of 100 students as they progress through our grades. Particularly as I was taking a look at the February enrollment, we're losing, compared to last year, a classroom per grade level as they get from 7th grade to 8th grade, and then it actually doubles as they go 9th, 10th, and 11th, and 12th. And I think it's because we're not giving them different educational opportunities. So what I'm hoping that streamlining the course selection guide will give us is opportunities to keep those kids back. How can we move from just a traditional classroom to set up blended learning opportunities for kids who still want to take online courses but still come into our school for elective classes, so they just don't leave our school wholeheartedly. And those are opportunities, and I don't need to front load something that's going to happen on personnel later, but those are opportunities that I look forward to working with Mr. Wassler on, our new high school principal, who will be voted on in a little bit, as we think about what we want our high school to be. So, you know, I just want to reinsure, black and white, it'll be here, that all of those same supports and systems will continue to be in there, particularly if you're a student with an IEP. Why? Because you're governed by the IEP. The IEP doesn't get eliminated because you actually don't see the class in the course selection catalog. And parents, as well as educators, always have the right to ask for an academic update or an academic meeting for a child's IEP if they feel like they're not making progress. So I leave you with this one final thought, which is, and this is really where it's stemming from, and as I read other course selection catalogs, as I sit with other superintendents and I have my monthly meetings with them, is every child, whether you're general ed, ELL, special ed, gifted, CTE, they need to be exposed to and taught at grade level expectations first, and then afterwards we remediate and enrich based on the individual needs of the students so that we don't forget, and we're just not wholesaling kids into particular classrooms. We're actually beginning to associate names with students and begin to think about what do each and every one of those students actually need in order to be successful. So there's the background on the course selection guide and the information that was utilized there. So I'll entertain any questions. I know Jamie worked intimately with a lot of the department chairs over this process, as well as Bobby. I know Kathy has been involved with it as well. She brings her special ed hat to the table, as we've been talking a lot about inclusive practices and her work with principals. So I'll gladly entertain any questions before the vote.
Question I would have is, in this process, I know you said that you worked with the department chairs. We had the comment tonight that there's a lot of staff members that weren't aware of the changes that take place. So I guess my question is there a disconnect? Is that normal protocol? Or is there something missing there that we're not all coming together on at the same time on the same page here? And secondly, if we did hold off and bring everyone up to speed for a month, is there any kind of timetable there that we're going to miss out on, if we don't approve it tonight, but rather next month.
I'll give you some background.
I don't know if it's on or not. First of all, Bobby and I first met together, talked about some of the ways we were streamlining it from the way that we had worked with Bill previously, and then she took it to the department chairs. They took the information, put it together. We talked about some of the things we wanted to look at. It came back to us with what they suggested, and then we streamlined it and made made changes based on where we wanted to go, as with the students. Can we wait? That is totally your decision. It does affect the rollout of scheduling, but that would be your decision.
In what way would it affect the rollout?
They already have scheduled to go up to the intermediate school, and also how they, for the 9th grade class coming through and designing that learning community. So they had planned on rolling it out prior, but they were waiting for your approval.
Okay, thank you.
Would your department chairs then have served as the representatives for the other staff members and voiced their concerns at that time?
That was with Bobby, that was not with me. I had department meetings regarding their curriculum, and we did curriculum and things that they were needing moving forward.
But the department chairs should have represented the
Yes.
interests of their areas at that time, yes.
So you're saying that Bobby, excuse me, I have a cold going on here, but you're saying that Mrs. Strasbaugh got together with all the department chairs and she worked with them to make some of these changes in the courses?
What she we looked at she gave them their old curriculum guide, talked about some of the changes we had talked about streamlining, and then gave it to them to rework it. I'm assuming she went over it with them, and then she brought it to us, and we then came together.
So it's not clear, really, whether the department chairs had a large role in this and whether the faculty were involved via the department chairs.
That would have been at their department meetings that they schedule, if they did.
Okay. And it sounds like some of that might not have trickled down to the teachers, and I guess I would have some concerns about that as well. Just the kind of trying to move away from the top-down model in the district, because I know that that's something that has been talked about in terms of kind of increasing the positive culture in the district. So I would personally like to see more involvement among. Would have liked to have heard that there was more involvement with the teachers and with the department chairs.
Just to remind you, this is the same process that they follow every year. So they ask the departments to submit their information. So,
okay.
As Mr. Eifert said, the department chairs are representing their department. So whether or not they choose to meet with them, they've been selected for that process because of content or knowledge or expertise. So this process isn't new this year. We didn't do anything new that they typically have not done in the past. So this was the same process I had last year under other administration where, hey, the departments worked on this, they met with me, we went through the process. This was just the first year we gave them feedback and said, we would really like to see this. It did go back to them. They made the edits and changes and then resubmitted it to us again. So
they saw the original idea. It was given to them.
The original idea was the course catalog they had last year.
Okay, and then they were asked
which
to
they created.
They were asked to make the edited changes, and then it went to you, and then it went back to them.
The edited changes were done actually in a meeting, so they would actually meet at the high school to go through some of the changes and go through some of the edits.
And that would.
And I know there were
to the high
a few
school.
that we actually went back and forth, like 2 different times, depending on the department. It was done by department.
And just to clarify, so none of those courses for the kids with the IEPs, any of the kids in learning support, none of those courses are going away. They're still there. It's just it's the course selection guide has been given a different look.
Correct.
What about, to Ms. Slater's point, what about those students? Are there still going to be processes in place to make sure that those students kind of in between, the ones that fall in between the cracks, that don't necessarily qualify for an IEP but certainly need the extra instruction? So that's still all going to be in place for all of those students as well.
The state implements an RTII process. It's not new. It's been with the state. It used to be called RTI, then they moved it to RTII. I think our elementary schools do a heck of a job rolling that out, and they meet the individual needs of students. So that's state mandated, and it's been with us for a long, long time. So part of that is, we kind of look at all students, and then we start taking a look at what % of students aren't meeting the general curriculum, and then we start tailoring a plan for them. And then worst case scenario for those students who are really not making the general curriculum, and we've already put standard or systems in place for them, then we go to kind of a tier 3 approach, which is now involving a lot more parent meetings, a lot more progress monitoring and so forth. So all of those things are in place only because the state mandates that it has to be in place. And like I said, we have lots of schools that have been implementing it, or schools around Pennsylvania implement it. I think our elementary schools do a really good job. They actually have selective days where they talk about student needs and so forth. So I think, it's in our district.
And if we, as a board, would decide to table this till next month, it sounds like it would affect being able to roll it out to the 8th and 9th graders, but it wouldn't, that's not something that can't be changed. I mean, we can move the rollout back a month without having severe negative consequences. Is that, if that's something we would want to do?
I think you're delaying the process for making course selections and so forth.
Would it give the possibility then to open discussion more about the course selection, or is this kind of well, it's not a done deal because we haven't approved it, but would it reopen the discussion so that maybe faculty might have felt more included in the process?
We can certainly come together and listen to him and talk about it. I don't know if it's really going to change the outcome of the actual content of the course selection guide.
I go back to the fact that the faculty should have been represented by their department chairs. And if the department chairs were extensively involved in this, then they should have been representing the interests of each of those departments at this point. I'm not sure what delaying this is going to do, really.
Just a follow-up question. Is this a complete list? Is this an exhaustive list? I know there were some things originally that were missing on what was presented in the course selection. They were added. Is everything now included?
Yes, it would be. It was when they merged it, not our visual arts and performing arts did not show up on it.
Okay. Is there anything
There's two separate attachments.
Just out of curiosity, is there anything aside from certain level of classes? Is there any classes or anything that has been eliminated from last year's course selection guide, or is everything that was offered last year pretty much offered again?
Yes, it may have been reworked and remediation was removed, as Ken said with...
Understood.
Yes.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
And there were a lot of ads to try and meet electives for students.
I would love to see our district become more PLC-centered. I have a lot of faith in that process. So in order for us to follow that process, I think it's extremely important that you hear the voice out there, because even if you feel that everything was done the way it should have been done, if there's anybody out there that's not buying into it, it's going to be an issue. So I just think all they're asking for is a dialogue. So I think it's extremely important that you at least listen to that dialogue and then determine what you need to determine from there.
I guess the thing that I'm hearing and I'm not understanding is we just reworked the catalog. I mean, we didn't make any wholesale changes to our curriculum, is what I'm understanding, correct?
Right.
I mean, we renamed them. Instead of English 9, 10, 11, 12, it's now English 1, 2, 3, 4, math, same thing. So I guess I'm not understanding what the big to-do is over this. I mean, if we'd have had major curriculum changes, I mean, I could say, yeah, we definitely need to get the staff involved in this, but that's just my thoughts on this.
I'd also like to weigh in and say that there were opportunities for discussion. Course catalog is something, it's not a surprise that, oh my gosh, it's February, now there's a course catalog. Course catalog is something we discuss every year, and being part of the curriculum committee last year, we did discuss it in the committee. So I would certainly encourage and remind the public and the teachers that those opportunities for that discussion are absolutely readily available, and we encourage and would love your participation in that. And the committee meetings is where all of this discussion is being had and where we can really have these great conversations. But to stall a vote or to put off a decision that really, with Mr. DeLauder, it's not changing. I'm not understanding what scheduling another meeting, the benefit that would bring when we do have opportunities for plenty of communication with the community and with teachers to be involved in that. I guess I'm just concerned why we haven't seen any parent involvement or teacher concern before today on this issue. That's my concern from a communication standpoint.
Any other board members?
Okay, so Mr. DeLauder, you mentioned that this was brought up at the curriculum committee before. Is that correct?
Not the course catalog.
Oh.
Not the course catalog itself, but we had, over the past year, we have discussed additional classes. I believe CTE classes too, I think, were part of that discussion of adding those courses to as a possibility. And I do believe we took votes on a couple of those classes, if I remember correctly.
To expand CTE, we did.
And also in our curriculum meetings, we also talked about switching back from the trimester to the quarters and the need for some more electives. We did all of that at committee and talked about that, just because we knew we were going to have to put that in the course selection guide.
And also in our comprehensive plan that we spent many, many, many hours developing and sending to the state for approval, this was a big topic of conversation through the comprehensive planning meetings as well. So that was also another opportunity to garner feedback. And we discussed the idea of high expectations for all students and how do we meet the needs of the individualized education that a lot of our students absolutely need. So it was also vetted through that comprehensive planning process that we spent many, many hours doing, and that the state actually approved the plan as well. So I think that was another opportunity for discussion and for concerns to be brought forward, because we did specifically address the remediation and where do we feel all of our students should be at the instructional level. So that was another opportunity for discussion on the idea of where we were going from a course standpoint.
So from what I understand, the course selection guide, there are none of the courses were changed, they were just renamed. And then some were eliminated and then some new ones were added. Is that what I'm understanding? But the courses themselves, if it was English 9 and now it's English whatever 1, that's the same course. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the curriculum within that course has not changed.
There's no new purchase of materials, there's no new curriculum, like hard books and so forth.
Okay.
It's the same materials.
And PA standards are still PA standards. They haven't changed in the last, we're still following PA core, correct? So the standards of what's expected to be taught to every student hasn't changed as well, and that's something that's governed by the state. That's not a district decision or a board decision. So they still have to deliver that instruction at the PA core level. Call for a vote.
Anything else from anybody? Okay, is there a motion to approve the 2016-17 high school course selection guide?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2016-2017 high school course selection guide.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, Mrs. Benko. Okay, there are 5 yeses, motion carries. Moving on, facilities, that would be Mr. Emig and Mr. Rawhauser.
We had our facilities meeting tonight. Couple things that we had discussed was, one of the items that has been constantly on the Safe and Supportive Schools, and then I moved to facilities, was the marquee. We have determined that if we use the existing marquee, we'd have to put 2 separate sides on it, which would cost more than what the proposed was for a new one. So currently, we're just going to put that on hold for now, because down the road, if we're looking at building, which could be years from now, we could get a architectural firm to donate the money to pay for a new marquee. A feasibility study is currently underway by Crabtree Rohrbaugh. Mr. Nelson had met with them and gave them some information. It was also informed to us that there are grants available up to $2 million. Plus, we feel that the recommendation is to have other architectural firms checked and not just go with Crabtree Rohrbaugh. March 12th will be a facilities tour. The first one will be from 8:30 to 11:30. The second one will be from 12:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon. One thing that the board is going to need to vote on is a demand response for electricity. Currently, Med-Ed is willing to pay for us to go into this. Mr. Nelson, would you like to address this demand response? And while he's coming up, once he gives his presentation, we need to implement this so that if we do approve this, it should be voted on at possibly the next meeting.
Good evening. Med-Ed, actually Direct Energy, who is our supplier of electricity, approached us last year to talk about this, but till we got things kind of in order, it was too late to get signed up for it. So Jen and I kind of started a conversation this year and had the gentleman in this morning. And basically what happens is, in the summertime, the capacity of electricity oftentimes is not adequate to supply Pennsylvania. So when Med-Ed sees a condition of either a brownout or a blackout on the horizon, which would be on a day where it was very, very hot, humid, a lot of air conditioners running, they ask customers, large customers such as school districts and industry, to curtail electricity. Not shut it off, but just curtail. Scale it back a little bit. Turn your air conditioners off, turn them up a little, turn your lights off, that kind of thing. They're willing to pay you to sign up for this. They have some guidelines. It's a 3-year contract or commitment. They will guarantee it won't be more than 10 occurrences per year. And I can tell you within the last, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 years, they have not had one curtailment. So in the last 3 years, nobody has had to curtail. What it means for us as a district is, in year 1, they would pay us, just for signing up, $5,984. If we have to curtail, it just means we use less electricity. If we choose not to curtail, now we can't choose not to curtail every time, but let's just say for some reason we can't curtail our electricity for whatever reason, there's no penalty not to do it. They just look at what they're paying you and they may deduct what they figured you were going to save. So if you might have saved $300, they're going to take $300 off of you. Our second year in the commitment, they would pay us $14,312. And our third year would be $20,247. These numbers are slightly negotiable at this point because they don't really know how much we can turn down. And they would determine that in mid-July of this year. They would actually pick a time frame and say, we need you to curtail. They would let us know about it a week or two ahead, and they would actually measure us. You might ask, why do we only get $5,900 the first year and we get $14,000 the second year and $20,000 the third year? The first year, in order to measure what we're deducting or reducing our consumption, we need to install electric meters at each building that would meter on the hour. So they could actually look at them from their office on a computer and say, yeah, they were at 5,400 kilowatt hours and they reduced down to 4,800. And they pay for that out of your first year savings. So we don't actually have to pay for it. They're just not going to pay us $14,000 the first year because they've got to put the meters in. By the third year, they assume that you're getting better at this and you're going to be able to curtail even more, and that's why that goes up. So it's the curtailment period would run from June 1st to September 30th. So as a school year goes, by June 1st, next year, we're out by June 1. But yes, we are coming back in late August. At least that's what I hear. I shouldn't have said that, so maybe that's a secret. Yeah, we are in school from maybe the third week of August until the end of September. The curtailments are only 2 hours. It's not like they're going to call us at 8 o'clock in the morning and say, you have to shut your electric off, or curtail your electric. I hate to use the word shut off. You have to curtail your electric all day. It's for 2 hours. Usually that 2 hour period is going to occur, if you think about it, what's your hottest time of the day? Between 5 and 6, or 7, or 4, in that neighborhood. It's going to be late afternoon. We may not even be in school if it's in September and they curtail us. But again, if we say, look, we have a major, production at the school and we just can't shut down. Well, we maybe can't shut that building down, but we could kind of curtail the electric in the other buildings. We're not going to get penalized for it. So it's kind of a unique operation. Schools that are doing it around us, and I don't have this list in front of me, so I'm going to try and pull it from memory. Southern, York Suburban, help me out here. Southwestern,
Southern,
Spring Grove.
Spring Grove.
Southeastern. It's quite a few around us have been doing it for years.
Most of the York County schools are doing this.
So I think Central is at least from what he said, is going to enter into this year also. So it's an opportunity to kind of get some money back, kind of free money. I hate to say it that way, but that's really what it is, for a slight inconvenience. Our curtailments will not be on a weekend, so we don't have to worry about, well, what if they call us on a Saturday and Sunday? Do we have to run somebody in here and pay them 2 hours to make the changes? It's not going to be that. It's a Monday through Friday deal. So we're going to be here anyway. But it's something to think about, and there's some money available that maybe we can use this for teachers, supplies, education of some sort.
Mr. Nelson, are there any concerns as far as like the equipment? Because I'm assuming we have some equipment rooms that have to be maintained at certain temperature levels to protect the equipment. Does that have any effect?
That won't. We'll maintain that equipment. Again, we're not going to shut off. We're going to curtail. Okay. So, and in fact, in 45 minutes, you're going to notice that this air handler is going to go off. And we go into night setback. And we do that at all buildings. Now, the only reason this building's still operational is because I knew we were going to be here tonight till about 9 o'clock. So I scheduled Tuesdays and Thursdays this week that it stays on until 9 o'clock. All buildings go into night setback at either 5 or 6. Almost all of them go in night setback at 5. What we would do in a curtailment is we have one of two options. I can just throw everything in the night setback and that's it. We're done. We reduce our consumption by about 25%. The other thing is I can rewrite our program for our HVAC, and I can maybe reduce that even more. Instead of going into a night setback, go into I'll just call it a curtailment mode, and we'll adjust that down. But areas like MDF and IDF rooms for computers, we'll keep those up. We won't mess with them. We're not going to shut down refrigerators, freezers, that kind of stuff. We're not going to adjust that. What we may ask is, okay, turn all the lights off you can turn off. I mean, that's pretty simple, that kind of thing. So, but it's something we talked about, and we are sort of on a timeline because he said we have to kind of know by the end of April. So I wanted to bring it to the committee so we could bring it to the board so you could start to think about it. And
if I could just add, one of the reasons we have to know by April is because they do once a year a test. And that test period is probably somewhere in June, July, August. So for them to install the meters that have to be installed and order the meters, install them and everything, it could take a while for them to do that. So they want to have everything in place by June 1st. So when they do that yearly test that we're kind of bound to, that will be ready, will be in place. If not, our rebates will not start for another year until we are able to do that test.
Any questions from anybody? I'll try and answer.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Want me to stay up for anything else?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was going to ask for a walk back.
And just one other item that had been brought up, Mr. Nelson brought up about snow removal. Years ago, he had budgeted $28,000 for snow removal. Of course, you know that the big snow we had here about a week ago, this money came out of his maintenance budget, and to cover every single building and sidewalk in the district, he spent $22,000 with the 30-plus inches of snow that we had. Now, he is applying for a FEMA reimbursement for that to help to hopefully cover the $22,000 that he spent out of his budget. So just to let you know that it was a very difficult snow, he had said, trying to remove that a week or so ago. That's all I have. Mr. Rawhauser, you have anything?
No.
Okay.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Emig?
Just one question. The facilities walkthrough, the purpose of that is for?
It's really to engage the community in taking a look at our buildings. So one of the things that I'll do with principals is we will kind of develop a building-by-building schedule, because I want all of our community members to see our buildings, particularly common spaces. So everyone get the opportunity to take a look at gyms, take a look at some standard classrooms, the cafeteria, the media center, because I think it's important as, you know, some momentum and conversation picks up regarding a building in the future, that we're making sure that we're targeting the right facility, and just, like I said, give people background knowledge as to why we're doing what we're doing. So there'll be an AM shift and a PM shift. So Mr. Nelson and I will put that together, share that with Mr. Emig to make sure it looks good. We're looking to hopefully have EMB available in terms of transportation so that they can help shuttle people around building to building. But once again, just like I said, between having the AM shift and the PM shift, it'll give the opportunity for those who might have sports commitments in the morning on a Saturday to join us on Saturday afternoon, and vice versa. So, like I said, it's really just building people's background knowledge about what our facilities look like.
Thank you.
Yep.
And it's roughly going to be maybe a half hour at each building.
Correct.
Okay.
That is on our website, by the way.
Yeah.
The information on our website. Can I share one other thing about safety?
Certainly.
We applied for a safety, Jen, I think we did this together. We applied for a safety grant back in October for $20,000, and we were notified we received that safety grant. So we'll be adding additional handheld radios at schools for elementary, high school, and intermediate school. We're going to try to cover as many as we can. Now, we're not going to get a lot of radios, but we're going to get 50
more,
and a bunch of cameras. We have not got the money yet. We were told we would receive it.
When the state budget comes, I'm sure we'll get the money.
4 years.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we'll get interest on that money if we wait too long for the budget.
Anything else for facilities? Okay, moving on to human and fiscal resources, Mrs. Mefford.
A lot of our items were handled by the consent agenda this evening, but there were a couple. Mr. Chair, are you going to highlight some retirements and appointments?
Yep, I wanted to make sure that we recognize those individuals that are, that were approved for retirement. So we have Tammy Hauser, who's at Dover Elementary with 30 years of experience, so exceptional time there spent. Regina Zarnik, who is at North Salem, she has 7 years there. Let's see, Jean Kern at Live with 22 years. Peggy Eisenhart at North Salem with 38 years of experience, so that's remarkable. And then Marla Davis, also from Weigelstown Elementary, and she has 28 years of experience. So I didn't do the math, but Steve, I know you did it earlier. What was it?
125 years.
125 years of service among these individuals. So I think it's a testimony to their commitment to our kids and their profession. So once again, I know I'd like to say thank you to them and their service. Also here this evening is a new appointment, and it's been a long time coming, but I am proud to introduce Mr. Jared Wassler, who will now be our new high school principal. So Jared, if you want to stand so everyone kind of knows who you are, what you look like, there he is. So we look forward to working with you, and I think you're coming on board at the end of the month. 29, yes. Yes, so he'll be there. So Jared, we look forward to working with you, and we have great hopes for the high school as well under your leadership. Thank you. I think I'm good.
We have on our agenda, we need to approve the financial audit by Boyer and Ritter, which was presented this evening. So I'd like to make the motion to approve the annual audit for the period ending June 30th, 2015.
Second. Any questions or discussion? Okay, Mrs. Benko. Okay, motion carries.
I'd like to approve the transfer of the $4,034,000 of general fund assigned for capital reserves portion of the fund balance to the capital projects fund and restrict the use for capital projects.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Questions or discussion?
Just wanted to make a comment here regarding that. Understand the need to do that. Legally, we're bound to make some adjustments to our unreserved fund because we're not allowed to have that much in there. So understand the need for it, but as a board member, I would certainly entertain the idea of a big picture planning of how, our fund balance and our current projected increases in expenses and plans, how that all kinds of comes together so that I would at least feel a little more comfortable with where everything is at, what our options are, potential building down the road, all that sort of thing, debt structure, all that sort of thing. There's a lot of fogginess in my head about that, so I understand why we need to do this, but I just would like to, throw that out there.
And one of our aims is to kind of take a look possibly sometime over the summer, kind of doing that public meeting to really go through our debt structure, our financial status, how that would actually lend into a building project with kind of a hold harmless to the community and so forth. So look forward to some additional information. It's part of PlanCon anyway. It's something that we have to do, but we want to get ahead of the kind of ahead of the curve and present that information early. So not only are we taking a look at facilities, but also, as you said, kind of what does this mean for us financially now and over the life of, let's say, if we received a bond, what would that take? What would that look like 10, 15, 20 years from now? Through paying that bond off. So look forward to more opportunities there.
Right.
You're also, from a financial standpoint, from a financial committee, we've looked at different fund balances that we have throughout the district in addition to the bonds that we hold, and we are going to be presenting in committee in the next month or so another investment strategy and investment schedule for some other monies to reserve them and earmark them as well. So it's not just this $4 million that we're transferring to capital projects. We're also really taking a very close look at what our fund balance is, because there's additional monies that we want to be conservatively investing so that we are receiving some kind of financial gain, but while we're still keeping the district in a position where we will not have to borrow money if we never get a budget. So there is a big picture that we are looking at. This moving of the $4 million really is to satisfy that requirement of maintaining that no more than 8%, and it was a recommendation as well. So we wanted to go ahead and take care of that, but you will be seeing those other figures coming before the board in the next couple of months as well.
You touched on an important part. I mean, we're talking about a state government that can't even figure out what we're going to do about last budget, and we're now in the throes of trying to figure out this year's budget. And I'm sure a lot of community members, staff, I myself as a parent is like, where are we headed? Nobody really knows that answer, but like I said, I know why we have to do this right now, but from the big picture, it'd be good for all of us to be able to be on the same page. So.
And as far as, Steve, as far as the state budget goes, it always puts a pit in my stomach every time we have a York County Business Managers meeting. Because, every time we go, it seems like some more bad news about the state budget. And I had shared with Kelly at our meeting prior to this, our committee meeting, that as part of the blue-lined budget the governor put together, right now, the PlanCon rental reimbursement, rental debt subsidy, has been blue line to zero. So what that says is, right now in 15-16, they are not funding our PlanCon reimbursements. Now, they are obligated to pay that to us at some point. I did an analysis today, and that looks like if we don't receive that money in 15-16, we're looking at $717,000 that we're not receiving. Now, if we would receive that as part of a 16-17 budget, because they are saying in 16-17 that it will be part of his budget, depending on when we receive that is when we can book that revenue for this year, or for the 15-16 year. So it's up in the air now. Across York County, what everyone seems to be saying right now, because of the uncertainty of the basic education funding and the special education funding, and it goes up, it goes down, everybody is projecting at baseline from what they were in the 14-15 year, because there's so much uncertainty with it. So that's kind of just a small state budget update as to where things are going. We received 45% of our state subsidy as part of the governor's proposed budget 15-16. But other than that, we're kind of at a lull for funds. Other districts that don't have such a big fund balance are in dyers, and they're going to have to either borrow or not open maybe here for the 16-17 years. So that's kind of where we are right now. We can't get out our magic ball and say this is where we're going to be, but I just kind of wanted to give you an update on that, and so the rest of you kind of know where we are with the state budget.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And then just, again, we can only have a certain amount in our general fund. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is it 8%?
In our general fund, the state recommends you have 8% of your budgeted expenditures in an unassigned fund balance. So when you look at your fund balance and you see we have a certain amount of non-spendable fund balance, which is your prepaid expenses and anything we paid out for to LBT for medical and sitting in there in reserves, and then any monies that you have committed. I think we have retirement, we have medical, we have a debt principal, we have a technology, and then your assigned portion of the $4 million that we had there that we're trying to move. This is what this motion is for. Those aren't calculated in that 8%.
Okay.
The 8% is only your unassigned portion. I think it's about $4 million at the end of 14-15. So that's where that 8% comes in. And I know that can be very confusing. Well, what's the point? So that's kind of, we're taking that $4 million and committing it or restricting it to use for future capital projects, whether it be a new building or a renovation, because somewhere down the line you do have to do a renovation or something. So,
And board action can always reverse the allocation of those funds. So even though we're moving it into that account now, we're moving it to maintain that 8%, but we as a board can make a motion in board action to move that back should we need to. Should we get into a situation where we need
money.
funds to operate, we can always make that motion to pull that back.
Any other discussion? Okay, Mrs. Benko. Okay, motion carries. Anything else, Mrs. Maker?
I would just like to report that the Finance Committee did have a chance to meet this afternoon, this evening, prior to executive session, and we discussed fund balance, we discussed the idea of the budget and what that looks like. We also got a presentation from Conrad Siegel, who is kind of our actuariist who looks at our healthcare plans and taking a look at, from a healthcare cost, what that looks like in the district, and provided some more figures as far as what our health insurance plan that we offer to our employees, what that looks like and the cost that's associated with that. So moving forward, as we enter and continue negotiations, we've got some more information for designing a comprehensive plan that meets the needs of our employees and also our district. We also are going to have a donation that was given to us, one donation that was given to us for some OWL boxes, and we also will be bringing to the board the recommendation to continue a donation, which we give every year. It is a budgeted amount. It's a $5,000 to the Friends of Dover Library. We've done it for a number of years, and it is a budgeted expense. So we want to maintain that relationship. They've reached out to us and said, hey, can you give us that donation again this year? So we recommended that it was brought to board at our next board meeting to go ahead and execute that order.
Before we leave this,
I'm sorry. I'm just going to ask the question about one of the items that was on the agenda there. I don't believe it was starred as being in the consent agenda. Is that what you were?
and I was going to congratulate Emily Miller for receiving tenure, and I also wanted to encourage the board to go ahead and vote on that this evening too, so we'll need to have a motion. It's an individual roll call vote when you do tenure.
For tenure, I thought it was a mandatory right to the employee, and it was not a board actionable item.
We voted on them prior to
You
this.
still need to vote on it.
Correct. So it is on there as letter I. So I'd like to make sure that Emily knows that we've recognized her and we thank her and we voted her in.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or discussion? Okay, Mrs. Benko.
I'll do a roll call vote. I apologize because I'm not able just to add it that quickly. So a roll call vote, or do you want to do a unanimous?
Just a unanimous is
Okay,
fine.
okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries.
And one more appointment, Mr. Barker, you're in a crowd this evening for men's lacrosse. I saw the lacrosse and I'm thinking, I know I should say something, so I apologize for missing the appointment, so congratulations on being voted in as the lacrosse coach.
Brian Gamble as well.
Yes, okay.
Is Emily here? Okay, anything else?
I don't see that.
That is it.
Okay. We will now move on to Safe and Supportive Schools. Mr. Cook.
Committee met this evening before our executive session, and we talked about a number of items. Just a follow-up from last month's meeting, we had a concerned parent who brought a concern to us regarding clearances and specifically junior achievement when they're in our schools, whether or not they followed through with the clearances, and found out that according to their program manager, Tammy, that they are still required to have all three clearances that our employees or any visitors would, parents, that sort of thing, volunteers would still need to do. Not required to have TB tests, not required to do the volunteer packet fill out, but they are required to go through the process of having the clearances. So that was a concern that was raised, and I thought I would follow up with the rest of the board on it. We dug into policy 822, 203, and 203.1. Policy 822 is related to the automated defibrillator policy that we currently have in place. We discovered very quickly that our policy is more about procedure than it is about policy. And so looking at other examples from other school districts, they had very simplistic policies that weren't in quite the detail that ours were. So we looked at, I believe it was 4 different school districts that had policies related to that. 3 of them had been recently updated, like within the last year or 2, and 3 of them were word for word exactly the same. So using that as our kind of framework, we believe we'll be able to bring a very quick policy back for board approval next month. At this point, we'll send that off to CGA, just have the language double checked, and should be able to bring that back to the full board then in March. Policy 203 relates to immunizations. Again, looking at multiple school districts, looking at different districts' policies related to that. There's a little bit of variation on this one, but again, our policy, which hasn't been updated since, I believe, 2002, I think it was back in the early 2000s, really was geared more from a procedural standpoint than a policy standpoint. So looking at other school districts there, I believe Southeastern was one that we felt kept the majority of what we really needed to have in there. And again, we'll be sending that off to CGA for policy language approval. And the thought was to incorporate, and like other policies have, incorporate not only immunizations but other communicable diseases along with immunizations, and broaden the topic just a little bit as these other policies did. We are currently, I don't believe, have a communicable diseases so-called policy in place. So that will be coming back to the board next month pending CGA language approval. We looked at policy 203.1, which is kind of a sister policy to the immunizations one. There's a little bit more work that we need to do on that one. We weren't quite ready to roll that one out yet. Specifically, PSBA had sent us a sample policy on 203.1, which is very limited to HIV. And the committee had discussed that and felt that it might be a little bit too limited, that there's other things that could also be, want to be included in that. So we're looking at a couple of different options there. Dallastown had a pretty good policy that was a little broader than just the HIV. So we're going to do some more work on that next month, and we should be able to finalize that, I believe, next month as well. So the only other thing I wanted to mention is we've been asked to reach out to Northern Regional Police and specifically Chief Bensel to start the ball rolling on the intruder drill, which we're hoping to happen sometime down the road. There's a lot of work that needs to happen regarding that in the planning stages, really looking at a 12 to 15 month period of planning down the road, but it really needs the blessing and the implementation from the large picture from our regional police department, as opposed to us implementing and asking them to do what we're asking. It's kind of them following or setting the bar, and we work accordingly, because they would be instrumental and a very pivotal part of that. So in the next month, I intend to reach out to Chief Bensel and start the dialogue rolling regarding that. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Any questions or discussion from Mr. Cook? Okay, we'll move on to technology. That is normally Mr. Deschaux. Mr. Cherry, is there anything that you're aware of that we needed to discuss there tonight?
Not at this time.
Okay. Dover Eagle Foundation. I have nothing new to report at this time from the foundation.
We have a competitive grant application going on right now, so I sent out an email about a week ago. So the foundation is excited to offer grants. So they have a competitive grant process, one grant per school, and then they kind of have an additional grant with some additional funds for kind of that exceptional idea. So please take a look for that email. As it says, it's a competitive process. So once the grants are submitted, they will be read and reviewed, and then the Dover Eagle Foundation will announce the winners.
Great. York Adams Academy, Mr. Emick.
We will be holding our regular meeting next Tuesday evening. And also up for tonight, we need to vote on the budget for York Adams Academy. Let me just give you some highlights. There will be no increase for membership fee this year. We actually have 12 seats at $4,100 per seat. The budget is decreasing by $71,832 because the director has cut one teacher, one assistant, and one executive secretary. The only increase to this budget is PSERS, which is going up 29.69%. There is 9 districts in New York County, 7 districts in Adams County, and since 1990, there was over 3,600 graduates that graduated from York Adams Academy. And just one highlight, they did receive communication recently from a York Adams Academy graduate who received his doctorate and is teaching at a university in Colorado. So Mr. Eifert, plus we also will need an alternate to serve on the board in case I cannot be in attendance. So Mr. Eifert, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the budget for York Adams Academy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or discussion? Okay, Mrs. Benko. Okay, motion carries. Do we have a volunteer to serve as the alternate for Ms. Stramig for the York Adams Academy?
I would be interested in doing that.
Mr. Cook, thank you. Okay, York County School of Technology, Mr. DeLauder.
I have nothing to report. Mr. Ramey, were you able to attend the last meeting, or did they cancel
No,
that?
they canceled
There
that.
was a storm, right? One of the storms.
The next one will be next Thursday evening.
Okay. LIU Special Education, Mr. Cherry. Would you like to cover that?
The only thing I mean, I sent out the minutes from their last meeting, so it was kind of a routine meeting that they had. So they send those to me on a monthly basis, so any questions or concerns, after you read the minutes, feel free to get back in touch with me. I believe you have 2 action items on the agenda tonight for the operating budget as well as the vote for membership. So I'll turn that over to you or someone who'd like to make those motions.
Do we have a motion to approve the 2016-17 LIU number 12 operating budget?
Motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Questions or discussion? Mrs. Benko? Okay, motion carries.
If I could just say, there's no real motion with this one. With the LIU board member vote, you have a ballot in front of you. Each of those ballots, it's not a board actual just voting for one person, but each of those ballots will then be forwarded on to the LIU. So if you could just fill those out and return them to me, I will forward them to the LIU. And there are 4 people on the ballot for unexpired terms, and we need to vote for 4. And those nominees are Richard Robinson from York Suburban, Cynthia Sullivan from Waynesboro, Christopher Ardinger from Tuscarora, and Paul Politis from Greencastle Antrim. There are also 5 full 3-year terms beginning July 1st of 16 and ending June 30th of 19. And there are 5 nominees. James Roberts from Southeastern, Corey Nade from Northeastern, Charles Still from Bermudian Springs, Kevin Mintz from Chambersburg, and Michael Wagner from Central York. So if you could just fill that out, and I will forward on to the IU. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Benko. Mr. Rawhauser, how are things in Harrisburg?
Not good.
Not good.
I mean, the school situation is a problem with being involved in agriculture, finding news out. Agriculture right now is being held a hostage. He was up there talking how nice it was at the farm show while everybody was there celebrating. Just to give you the information, I read an article where a 4-H child said, I guess the governor don't like us because he shows and shows. They still haven't been paid their premium since September. And he's cutting school funds, so he said, I guess he just don't like school children. The bottom line is, from what I can read in the newspaper and different things, that he wants to raise taxes, but doesn't want to give the taxpayers any support as far as reduction in taxes. It's just a mess, you know. Either you do it my way or you take the highway, or it's just sad. And they're not really honoring the Constitution. That's basically the bottom line.
Just got word yesterday that the York County Extension Office, which, you know, most of us have had some sort of dealings with over the years, closed. At least the extension agent lost his job as a result of this budget impasse, and it's really is very, very sad. And without getting on a soapbox, you know, we're asked to abide by rules, and our leaders, who should be leading by example rather than by word of mouth, can't do what we're being asked to do. And I don't know what's going to change it, but something's got to change, because it's going to start affecting more and more people as we go. And it's already affecting a lot of people, but it's going to affect more and more people. So it's just very, very tragic.
Any questions or discussion with Mr. Rawhauser? Okay, PSBA representative. We currently do not have a PSBA representative. Is there anybody at this point that would be willing to step up and serve in that role?
Mr. Eifert, I'm not stepping up and volunteering that at all, but I do have a PSBA update that I will offer the board after somebody volunteers or is appointed. I think Mr. Emming would be a wonderful candidate for that position.
Yeah, I have nothing to do. I'll do it.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Emming.
Choo-choo.
What's one more night out at home?
With PSBA, there is a very unique opportunity that is occurring on March 2nd and 3rd with the repeal of No Child Left Behind and new legislation that's coming through for mainly secondary education. They are convening a council on March 2nd and 3rd, so two weeks from now, Tuesday and Wednesday. There's a group of about 60 people that are going to be put together looking at different implications of that law and putting together recommendations for State Board on how to best take that law and really make it work for schools. One of the subsets is charter schools, looking at charter payments and how that affects school districts. Another one is looking at teacher effectiveness, taking a look at that model and how it can really be made better and made more user-friendly so that schools can use that to actually improve instruction. So again, March 2nd and 3rd, I know an email went out by Mr. Maines, who is the president of PSBA, calling for volunteers. I know there are several of us in the area that will be there in 2 weeks, so I will be able to bring back some more information for the board and how that piece of legislature is going to be affecting Pennsylvania schools.
Thank you, Mrs. Mefford, and thank you again, Mr. Emming. I was going to nominate Mr. Deschaux because he was not here to run away and get away from it.
Oh, that's fine.
Thank you. Okay, Superintendent's report, Mr. Cherry.
All right, a few items. First of all, I'd like to thank the intermediate school for the artwork around here. So I think they did a beautiful job. So at first I thought, oh my gosh, the high school gave us some really good stuff, and I was really just shocked to see some of the 7th grade displays that are here. So I want to thank them for their contribution to the boardroom this evening. I also want to thank our varsity boys basketball team. We went out and watched them compete in districts. They won Friday and then obviously had an upset with Lampeter the other night. But I just wanted to thank them. They did a really nice job at the basketball game. Thank the board for adopting the school calendar this evening. Once again, we'll be returning back to quarters and semesters in the calendar, and Mr. Rawhauser, you'll be glad to know that we will not have multiple bus runs anymore because everyone will be following the same calendar. So took that into planning, into action to make sure that that would happen. As most said, no snow will be out in May. Will be the first time in a long time. And just to reiterate some additional comments, I know the weekend in November needs some different shading, but just know that the flexible time that typically our K-8 teachers experience in the month of November, we'll make sure to highlight that better so that they understand that we can meet the needs of parents with evening and or morning conferences based on their schedule. So we'll have that published by tomorrow. I just want to highlight 2 additional work opportunities. The curriculum will be working on a grading policy, I believe, coming up at their next meeting. So I always encourage staff, community members to come out and have some input on the possibility of a K-12 grading policy, which I believe is a long time coming. I think there was a lot of work and it kind of got stuck. So we're hoping to rejuvenate that and bring that back out. And I think now is a great time as we move to Skyward to kind of work on that so that we can load our new student information system up with the intent in which we go. Also, a little over 2 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to meet with 2 ELA program providers, curriculum providers. So we were joined here in the boardroom with a group of elementary teachers who were able to take a look at 2 programs, and then later on secondary teachers to take a look at the current secondary program that's being offered at the IS. So I look forward to some recommendations coming to the curriculum committee about which programs that they're actually recommending. So We're currently working on quotes and pricing just to get an idea of what each one of the programs would cost. All the teachers that participated took kits back to their school so that their teachers could actually take a look at them and kind of rummage through them and get an idea of what the support materials might look like. So we're going to be calling that group to come back and kind of give us some additional questions that we want to ask each one of the curriculum providers going forth. And then finally, kind of has to deal with the snow that we kind of talked about. So, you know, one of the avenues in which we communicate closings and openings and delays and so forth is through Facebook. And our Facebook page, if you've been to it, I'm excited since we had 900 individuals follow us when I started. We have well over 2,400 now, 18 months later, so we have a lot of traction, a lot of coverage there. We do attempt at most to keep it updated, and we keep our celebrations there. We highlight students, we highlight accomplishments and achievements, but it's an open page, meaning anyone is feel free to say things. And unfortunately, during the snowstorm, it really brought out some true characters and individuals who were posting there. You can be mad at me. You can be mad at me all day long. It's part of the position. But when I see parents arguing with one another on there and using profanity and making derogatory remarks about their kids and maybe they should leave the district and so forth, it's at this time that I need to reevaluate how we want that page to look and so forth. So I do believe in the future that we'll be turning the option to make comments off. So we'll still have it as a viable page to celebrate, to post pictures, accomplishments, and so forth. But if individuals wish to make comments, once again, we have monthly board meetings. They can come out and make public comments. We have an information email that they can always email us comments or questions, and we typically get back to them. Our principals are always inundated with questions anyway, so there's an avenue there. But, you know, we work on a daily basis with our PROUD acronym to really work with our kids to model the appropriate behaviors, and it's sad when our own public Facebook account gets torn up by individuals who are on there not displaying the same expectations that we would of our kids. Therefore, as I said, I will be working tomorrow to eliminate the communication piece of it in terms of being able to do two-way communication and just make it a one-way communication piece going forth and so forth. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. And as Brooke said, she had her extra day, so I'm hoping no more days. We had our 4 built in. So that is all. So I'll entertain any questions that someone may have.
I do have a question. You had mentioned meeting with the seniors about graduation, and I know parents are getting kind of antsy trying to plan and prepare. At what point do you feel that we'll have a date set or a venue set, or when will there be more information to share?
I would say by next month. So the committee has really been working hard. The issue is just the limit of space. You know, so I think one of the things that our group did last year is they really did an exhaustive effort of going out to find spaces that could actually meet the capacity in terms of our needs. So they're looking at the current venue that was used last year, but they're also taking a look at any other venue that could possibly do that. So I imagine that the team will come forth next month with their recommendation for graduation.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Cherry? Okay, thank you, Mr. Cherry.
You're welcome.
Miscellaneous. Any board members have anything else to discuss tonight?
Yes. Thank all of the staff members that helped through the last month, because I understand there was a number of people that helped to move snow and to get snow going. I mean, yeah, get it going. And another thing, thank the 2 Northern Regional officers who are here tonight, because they're not the type of group that gets many thanks for the work they've done. They get more negative comments than positive. And another comment is, since I'm a sports fan, we have a graduate from Dover, which most people don't know in the sports world, that made it to the Pro Bowl, Mr. Kuhn.
Thank you, Mr. Rawhauser. Is there anything else from anybody?
That's it.
I just want to say I have sympathy, because I used to have to call, when I taught preschool, I used to call school, and I never got any love. So I never complain.
Anybody else? Okay.
I just wanted to, on that note, just jog my memory, like what Ms. Herman said, but Just wanted to applaud you, Mr. Cherry, for your notifications well ahead of time, by and large. I know one day this week you couldn't do that because of the circumstances, but by and large, parents are finding out the evening before when schedules are being adjusted for the next day, and I'm sure that's very appreciated. So
I judge my calls on Facebook, so, you know, if I'm not being blasted, you know, I figure it's the right call. When when I feel like I don't make the right call, they kind of let me know. So the other day was kind of iffy, you know. It's one of those situations that we all knew by noon we would be fine. The weathers would be fine, the rain would come, it would wash everything away, but the fact of the matter is we need to send buses out at 7:30, or they need to be getting warmed up, and they need to be out almost before 8 o'clock. So at that point in time, if we determine roads not to be safe, even though we can forecast, all right, we know it's going to be fine a few hours from now, you have to side on the era of safety. So tough call. I think we're good so far. Like I said, I know there's something magical in the air for next week that they're talking about. I'll pray that it goes away. But like I said, it was interesting. At least we had it all at one time, and as Mr. Rawhauser said, I hope it all goes away because it was an undertaking just to remove all of that snow. So.
And thank you to
I know you
Mr.
were
Nelson
involved
and
in
his
all those
crews too on
yeah.
that, so. Okay, anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to our second public comment period. Again, this is for items on or off the agenda. This is a 2-minute period this time. So if you have anything you'd like to bring before the board, please feel free to come to the podium at this time and state your name and address. Okay, not seeing anybody, we'll move on. Future meeting announcements. Our next meetings of the board will be Tuesday, March 15th. That will be our board action meeting. Thursday, March 17th will be our committee meetings. At this point, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or discussion? Let's take a vote.
Sorry, you could have just
I
done
think
it.
you should just put it out there.
We have to do this too?
No, we're not, we don't want to leave it.
We're having a sleep in. It's a sleep in.
I almost walked out, so.
I was going to say I'm halfway there.
We hope so.
I think we're done before we.
Go ahead.
Motion is carried. We're